Hey everyone, thank you for joining for another episode of Wrap Up Podcast. Today I'm with Ben. For people who do not know, Ben, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ben. I'm one of the co-founders here at Stuut. Stuut is a series of AI agents that helps companies collect cash on time and make sure that their AR process is streamlined to grow their business.
So, what problems do you guys solve? Because I checked your website. So, your website says you are guys creating AI co-workers. What does AI co-worker mean? Are you creating a general AI co-worker for any part of the business, or are you focusing on certain parts or aspects of the business?
Yeah, I think our website obviously is a little different than others. We have our little Stuut robot, which is kind of fun. So I encourage people to check it out. But we have AI agents that help with the order to cash space. So specifically within the suite in finance, we are looking at once an invoice is created, all the way through closing that invoice out or having a dispute that you have to manage, right? To then figure out what's wrong with the invoice. So that whole life cycle. And the problem we're solving is helping companies reduce their overdue balances, right? So public companies have to publish it. It's on their asset sheet, but really it's a liability, is all this open
Mhm.
AR. And it really prevents companies from growing their business because they don't have working capital to reinvest in the business. I think the thing that we're doing different, everyone says AI on their website now. It's, every company is an AI company. Our company is
Absolutely.
our company is only a year and a half old. So everything from the core has been built with AI at the center. And I think our approach is that we actually want to do the work and help
Okay.
collectors and help cash appliers and help people who are doing dispute management actually do the job because they're overworked. There's too much work to be done. And so if we can
Okay.
actually do the work versus giving them a dashboard to click some buttons, we can
Mhm.
effectively help them get through their day and then start working on things that take, you know, um, more consideration, more debate, higher level things like what is the credit level we should give this customer? Are we making the wrong mistakes? Is there too much risk in our AR profiles? That's where collectors
Okay.
and cash appliers should be focused, not on responding to invoice inquiries. So I think that's a big difference, is not a dashboard, but actually a product that solves and does the job.
What's the difference between your AI or your solutions and standard, let's say, machine learning or rule-based platforms where you just set up the rules, say like do this and that when you get this and that, and then it's executed? How are you guys
Yeah.
different?
Yeah, great question. So we're actually learning from the collector. So let's use collections as the example. And so I'll say collector, but
Okay.
it can be any part of the process. So we're learning and adapting based on what that collector is doing. Um, Everyone thinks that collections is this very straightforward process. You send an email on day 7, day 14. If you just continually pepper the customer, they'll eventually pay. The truth
I
is
do
that
the same.
collectors hold a lot of knowledge in their head that is not in an ERP, that is not in a CRM. It doesn't live anywhere, right? They know, hey, if
Yeah.
I really need to get paid from this customer, I've been working with them for 10 years. I pick up the phone and I call Sam, and Sam gets the invoice paid. And I do that when I really need to. You have to learn those patterns and learn that behavior over time. You're not
Mm.
just going to learn it day one. And so our approach is really, what can we automate right away, right? If someone writes back and says, hey, please send me a copy of invoice 123, that's a pretty easy one for us to answer and do the work. So that's not rules based. That's us
Mm.
reading the email, understanding the intent, and then replying back for that collector to get that task off their plate. But then there's more nuanced ones where someone may say, hey, can you actually extend the date out 7 days? I need a little bit more time. We're waiting on a big payment from a customer. What's the response that you want to give based on both that customer and what your company policies are? Those are important things to learn over time. And so
Okay.
everyone thinks of just rules based. Our AI is able to take those different scenarios, learn the
Mm.
common ones over time, and then get affirmation from the user, involving them in the loop to understand how they want to respond. So that over time, we go from automating a certain number of responses, to then more and more and more as we gain confidence in how the company and the collectors like to handle those situations.
So basically, I mean, you guys are also utilizing Gen AI, and one of the best things about Gen AI is like they can learn, right? It learns from your behavior, how you do things, and then based on that, it can improve over time. This is a very, very good thing about Gen AI. And you just mentioned that there are CRMs, there are ERPs that finance teams are using, and I also know there are a lot of Excel sheets because I worked in the industry.
Yeah, yeah.
I collaborated with the finance teams. So where do you guys sit? So where are you in this whole flow?
Yeah, so we plug into both your ERP and your CRM. We pull in data from both. It just depends on your workflows, right? So some companies will have their dispute cases built in their CRM, in which case we'll want to help there. We also want to pull in any customer data that's really valuable to understand
Okay.
the collections process or the cash application process. So the
Hmm.
more data that we have about an account, the better. But we try and get rid of Excel. So a lot of our customers are still using Excel, tried and true. Nothing wrong. Love Excel, but not the best
Yeah,
thing to prioritize your day. Getting a daily report, right? They start at the top, focus on the most
true.
overdue, highest balance customers, and they only get through half the list or a quarter of the list. We're able to give the collector 100% coverage on their accounts, which is
Mm,
very impactful. We're able to make AI phone calls. We can do emails as well. We also do text messaging. So we're able to cover making sure you contact your customers. And
mm.
really, then it becomes what do you do when you get responses? How do you
Okay.
help keep moving things from the customer along? So, where do I send a check? What's your ACH information? Can you send a W-9 for me to get this process? Hey, Sam's no longer the billing contact. Ben is. Those are the common things that come up day in, day out that
Yeah.
collectors are dealing with. And we
Yeah.
unlock them to then not have to focus on those tasks.
And how do you integrate with my existing systems? Let's say I have different kinds of ERPs. As I said, I use Slack, for example. Sometimes I go and communicate with my, let's say, service provider or any other third party on Slack. How do you guys integrate with all of those tools? Do I have to do it myself, or you somehow jump in and do the integrations?
Yeah, so on the ERP side, we'll connect very quickly. Our average customer is up in 3.6 days, so very fast time to value. We do that via API or flat file. So if you have a cloud
Mm,
ERP, we usually have the connector that just requires, a simple connection. And we also do flat file integrations to get customers who need more time to get the API connections set up and ready to go. But then on the Teams and Slack side, that's actually coming in Q1. So you queued up a nice product announcement that's coming our way to be able
okay.
to interact with our agents in Teams or in Slack. We
Okay.
use Slack, but a lot of our customers use Teams, so we're doing both to make sure we cover both areas. But yes, you could ping a customer channel. You could have the agent reach out to a collector and say, "Hey, there's a high priority email you need to respond to." All the interaction we want to help basically be an additional coworker who supercharges the collectors, the cash appliers, the deductions management team throughout the day to help prioritize their day and orient them around what they needs to be done.
But what do you think? What's the biggest misconception about AI these days? I mean, uh, what people understand incorrectly or wrongly, I would say, in your opinion.
The one thing I think there's many things that people misunderstand or don't really
Okay.
um but I think the biggest misconception is the value of AI is where the value comes from, right? So everyone sees like generative AI as being the big thing. Hey, I can get some output, I can get an email written, I can do something else. I think the real misconception is the power of AI is the understanding of context. So
Okay.
one of the things that we have built from the ground up is we have an agent that sits on top of all of these different sub agents that can hold
Mm,
state about a customer. So let's just use the example of I reach out to Sam and I say, "Hey, Sam, you owe me some money. Can you please pay me?" You write back and say, "Great, I just put an ACH in for transfer in. You should see the money for these three invoices tomorrow." In most tools, that just in SaaS tools, that just sits in that collector's inbox and just lives there. And so when the money comes in 5 days later, the person
all
who's
right.
applying cash has to then say, "What's this for?"
Okay.
And they reach out to the other human and say, "Hey, collector, do you have any information on this?" The human goes through their inbox. Maybe they're out of office. They don't know. When that email hits in Stuut, we immediately transfer that data over into the cash application tool. So it's ready to go and the other agent has state. And so I think the big misconception is that when new emails or new information comes in, how you update context and hold state, that's where a lot of the real value comes in AI. How do you
Mm.
like continually understand new changes but also pass information between these different workflows? I think that's the huge unlock here. So it's more about parsing intent and understanding and reasoning from a communication back to you more than it is generating a new email output. I think that's one area where people overlook sometimes, and that's where the real value is driven from.
I also want to learn people like about where AI sits. What I mean by this is that do you think AI just going to become one layer on top of the things that I have, CRM and etc., and you guys come in and just build on top of that, or do you think over time, basically you guys could potentially replace everything, my CRM, then after that, my Excel sheet. Then moving forward in the long term, maybe even some of my finance team, let's say, starting with the junior team members, maybe, who knows? What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. We have some look, I think there's a lot of real value in ERPs, and I think a lot of I'll just use the ERP as the example, and CRM too, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
they're very embedded in workflows within a company. I think companies, the reason they don't change ERPs very often is there's a huge shift when you want to change your ERP, right? There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things
Mm-hmm.
that happen on the ground, change management that requires, a lot of risk involved for your business, and that's why
Okay.
companies are sometimes hesitant to do that. I think that replacing that layer is going to take a long time. However, I'm surprised at the number of CFOs that are thinking in the long run, not the next 5 years, not the next 6 years, but 10, 15 years from now. Well, I just have a database that becomes my ERP, and that database is mine. But then I have all these agentic workflows and AI agents that access that database and replace, you know, those different systems and UIs. It's a
Mm-hmm.
really interesting question, and I think I don't have the answer, but I'm really curious to see how it plays out. I'm really curious to see what UI becomes in the future, right?
Yeah,
Because I
exactly.
think people are getting chatbot fatigue right now. They're no longer wanting to chat with all these different, bots that are the AI agents that are just, in the form of chat GPT.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think they want something different. And so I'm curious to see how UI morphs and modifies with that concept of like, do I need this ERP interface or is it really just this database? And then what does the interaction look like with that data? I'm with you. I'm curious to see what it looks like.
Yeah. And also if you talk about CFOs or CFO team, they're usually very much concerned about auditability. You have to show the trace if someone comes in and asks for the information. How do you guys potentially ensure that? Or not you only, what do you think any company that's implementing AI, what they need to pay attention to when it comes to this auditability and security part of things?
Yeah. So I agree. Auditability, especially for financial instruments, tools is a very important thing. You have to treat the AI agent as a human who's coming in and doing work, right? You have to audit the
Okay.
entire AI agent and then also make sure you audit things the human has done, the user has done on top of the agent to course correct things. And so I think all of that is it's a very interesting area that is not often talked about, but we do
Mm-hmm.
that. We track every interaction as if it was a human clicking the buttons in the screen. So I think that's
Okay.
a very um, it's a very important part of being able to go back. You have to go back and say, is this who did this? What was the change? And I think it'll
Mm-hmm.
be interesting to see how like auditors start treating AI agents as part of that auditing process because that's
Mm-hmm.
good. That's the new wave, right? Hey, these all these records changed over the course of the last 12 months, but now the majority of them are from not a human, but from an AI agent. And it'll be interesting to see if there's like auditing scores for AI agents. What does that look like? What's the reliability on those things? A really interesting area that I think we see a lot because of financial systems and the importance for public companies and even private companies that are larger to be able to have that traceability. Um, but it's an area that I think is often overlooked and a one that I think that people the customer are starting to push for more, and so you'll see a lot more work there on how it's done.
Especially if you think about it, when AI hallucinates, because they do hallucinate, right? It's very scary when you think about auditability. If you ask something, and as you know, if AI does not know, they make up. They say like
Yeah,
some random stuff that does not exist. So yeah, that's the very interesting aspect. I would also love to keep an eye on that part. And here's another question. I'm really curious. As you guys were starting, why do you think CFOs are preferring or switching to AI tools than, let's say, hiring more people to their team? What is pushing them towards AI adoption?
yeah, I think it's the impact. It's so our average customer sees a 37% reduction in their overdue balance in the first 6 months of
Okay.
going live with Stuut. That is a massive impact to their business. And so I
Okay.
think it's right, it's always about scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our customers have done the ROI math. And for a certain segment of their customers, and even, that's pretty much 80% of their customer base, there's a certain cutoff point where there's no value in adding more humans because the
Mm.
collections piece doesn't benefit the additional headcount costs, right? And so what they do is they just hope those customers pay and then kind of, If not, they write them off as bad debt, or it just sits on their overdue balance and they put them on credit
Okay.
hold. With AI, you can have someone who works 24/7 and can reach out to all of those
Mm.
customers, even handle responses. That's a huge shift in the idea of what like labor can do. Let's say this is labor, right? And how fast labor can work and how labor can scale. And so when we talk to customers, we sell them coworkers or agents, and those agents are
Mm.
effectively just like the equivalent of what you would hire as a human, obviously doing a lot more of the work, but that's how we think about it with our customers. And so they've struggled with this balance of, hey, how do I handle this high volume part of my business where a human going after every individual invoice does not have a good ROI. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think what they're looking for is scale and then results. And I think a lot of the time, I think you're seeing in the news, people have been buying AI solutions that either are sitting on the shelf or not getting used. I think that's been like the last wave of news over the last 2 to 3 weeks with a lot of companies. And I think if you focus on the results that you need to drive for the customer and what matters to them, then your solutions, agentic or even non-agentic, will be impactful. And so that's what we focus on.
How do you look at competition? Because you know there are some players, big players in the market. I would say Ramp, Brex, for example. They are like covering the full set of solutions when it comes to accounts payables, receivables, expense management. How do you guys planning to compete with those guys? Because I mean they are basically developing in the same direction as you are.
Yeah, we don't see them in our space transparently. They're great companies. We're a Ramp customer, huge fans. They don't
Okay.
they're playing more in the AP space more than the AR space right now. Now,
Okay.
I'm sure they have future roadmaps that we'll see how that goes. But on the AR space, um, I think we're only focused on ourselves and building the best product for our customers.
Mm-hmm.
I think when at the end of the day, there's a lot of great companies that are great fits for certain customers. It's for us, it's about how do we build for our customers and continue to drive value. And so what we see, that's how we view it every day, and make sure our product's improving and not really focused on the competition. But I think competition is the best thing. It helps everyone build better products, and so that's sort of our approach, um, and are very focused on how we drive and continue to drive value across this order to cash life cycle for our customers.
Makes sense. And if you zoom out a bit, where do you think the market in general is going? I mean, the CFO stack market in the next 5 years, how quickly AI will become part of the whole stack? What do you think?
I think different industries will move at different paces. I think
Right.
that's just always the way it is, right? Certain industries with more regulation will move slower. Other industries that
Yeah.
have less regulation will move faster. What I really think is going to happen though is these companies that are in the middle of the market, like the 500 million to $5 billion companies, are the ones who have I think the perfect balance of risk tolerance of willing to try new things to help scale and then have the ability to do it quickly. I think they're going to push the envelope and push the envelope for the enterprise and push the envelope for the tier below them. And I'm really interested in how they think about it because they have the scale to do
Yeah,
things that
exactly.
with AI that are more impactful, but also that risk tolerance. And so where I think things go is I think the vision that a couple of our customers have around this idea of like they own this database
Okay.
that holds this workflow, but then different agents are doing different parts of the workflow and interacting with people where they are. So we work with a lot of manufacturing businesses. Going to log into an ERP if you're working in a production plant is maybe not the most effective way to do something. But what if you could send them a text message and be like, hey, did this order go out for shipment? And they could just write back yes. And that gets consumed and then the next part of the process kicks off versus them having to go sit at a computer somewhere,
Mm.
say confirm the order was done, right? All those things I think get um your UI and your UX completely changes. And I think how the business and like the sellers work the ERP to give finance what finance needs to then execute is really where there's going to be a lot of innovation.
I also believe so. You know, I'm really looking forward to set up where AI agents will start talking to one another. You said, for example, Ramp and Brex, they're working in the direction of accounts payable, right? And you guys in
Mhm.
the direction of accounts receivable. And imagine there are two businesses and AI agents are speaking to one another. Accounts receivable and payable, they're speaking. And I think that way, small businesses will evolve even faster because they now don't need to hire a lot of people. The software they buy from you, for example, already doing part of the job, right? And maybe they just need to get someone part time that will help them initially to set up everything. Then it will like on automated flow, everything goes on. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward for that setup. And my last question to you is, what should we expect from you guys in 2026? What's in your
Yeah. A
product
lot of
pipeline?
Yeah, a lot more innovation, a lot more pushing the envelope with the full suite of order to cash. That's what we're most excited about. I think
Okay.
we continue to want to go deeper and deeper in certain areas, but also increase the breadth because let's use credit. We're planning to launch credit in Q1. Probably should announce that publicly, but secrets out. We're in beta there, and and I think credit is a really interesting aspect of how you do collections, right? Does a company's credit change? Is there something that happened in the news that I didn't notice about that like a company announced, hey, like we're no longer expanding plants, we're shutting down plants. Are my customers that I need to collect from, is something changing about what's going on with their business that should make me reevaluate what I'm doing with how I'm doing business with them to protect myself? And I think a lot of collections issues or even, down funnel issues in the order to cash process start at that place of what's going with with the other customer. Um, and so I think that's an area that we were really excited about to have that flow through all the different pieces of like how do you interact with a customer, how do you collect from them, how do you change things upstream if the customer has an issue, right? Like I mentioned, if they're starting to reduce their expansion footprint, there's signals that they may be having financial trouble. How do you relate to the sales team to tell them, hey, we need to change the terms, we need to change the credit limit, we need to protect ourselves against this risk? That really excites me because it starts getting into the areas of how does finance work with sales to sell and grow, but doing it in a way that's healthy to the bottom line, right? And that's always been our approach from the beginning. Is I think our original website, our first tagline was accounts receivable as a revenue function, and we believe that, right? Sales goes and sells something. They should part of sell. The only point of selling something is to have money end up in your bank account. So if that
Exactly.
process is disconnected, then what are you actually selling? Or are you just giving something away for free if they don't end up paying you? And so I think that dynamic, we're really excited to start seeing our customers push us into helping upstream in the order management space. I think disputes flows right back into order management as well and making sure invoices are correct at the point of sale. And so all of those areas are where we're going in 2026. Obviously, all with the power of AI and our AI agents at the forefront, but super excited to continue to help our companies collect cash and maintain a healthy business to grow and scale.
Ben, it was a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for sharing all your insights and vision. That was very helpful. I think that will be very helpful to my audience as well. And look forward to stay in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, you too. Thanks for having me, Sam.